So we're going to be doing Peyote Stitch today, and I'm going to show you the basic technique and how to make a pattern. It's a pretty straightforward beading technique, and it's pretty easy. The most difficult part is following your pattern correctly from the paper, but first we're going to get started. For today's demonstration I'm going to use this Nalgene and these really large, bulky, cheap beads just because they're easy to see. So we're going to do our first row, and I'm not sure exactly how long or how many beads it's going to take, so that's what we're going to find out. If you're working on leather or any material that you can pierce the needle through, you're going to take a first couple passes just right on your beginning point. So wherever you want your beads to start, that's where you're going to draw your thread through. And for this purpose, because I can't take a pass or take a bite through the leather, I'm going to use tape and tape it down. So you can tie a knot in the end of your thread, pass it through the leather, and it will hold on the back, or however you want to start it. That's an easy way though. For this purpose, tape. And now I'm going to start counting out beads. We're going to start with, I've got the most of yellow, so we're going to start out with all yellow. And for now, all we're doing is getting enough beads to go around evenly the whole way. Alright, so I have enough beads to go all the way around, and it looks like I have a few extra here, so instead of having to pull them off and take the needle off, if you make a mistake or pick up a wrong bead, you can just go back through it and they'll just fall right off. So I'm going to count my beads because we need to have an even number of beads for the peyote stitch on first row, otherwise it doesn't quite work out correctly. So I'm going to count how many I have here, and 39. So we need to take off one bead or add one bead because we have an odd number of beads. And I think if you have it too loose, like this, if it can kind of wiggle around, then your whole peyote stitch from that point forward will sit loosely on your dowel or whatever it is that you're beading. If you have it too tight, you can get spaces that show up. So it's somewhere in balance. Honestly though, one bead doesn't make a huge difference when you're getting down to it. So I think it's perfect with 39. I think I'm going to add one bead on and go with a little on the looser side. And that will give me 40 beads. So now that I have 40 beads around, I'm going to take a pass through every single one of my beads. So just like so, you're going to go back around through all of the beads. And it will make a circle. Make sure to keep that circle on whatever it is that you're beading. Just like so. And you'll be able to get a feel for how tight or loose it's going to be. And you can see this one's definitely on the looser side. If you wanted it to be on the tighter side, we would have taken a bead off and maybe gone with a little more gaps. Because I have the tape here, I can see where I started them, so that's my first bead right there. This will be my last bead. If you are starting on leather or a material that's not hard to or not easy to see where that first stitch is, just make sure you keep an accurate count. Count how many beads you're actually going through. But I don't need to do that because I can see exactly where I started and where I'll end. And it's not going to hurt anything if you go through the last or the first bead, first 4 or 5 beads twice. It's probably not going to hurt anything too bad if you don't go through the last bead either and miss a few. But just for purposes of consistency, try to go through each one twice. So we've been through every one twice, and now it makes a circle that stays on. And the next step, I'm going to do with purple beads. This is going to be the pattern you do for the rest of the peyote stitch. On this first row it still looks different than it will the rest of the time, but this is essentially it. Okay, we've got our beads all the way around, and we're going to start the next row, and I'm going to do this in purple so it's easier to see. I apologize that this first row in yellow is hard to see where the beads are, but I'll try to make it really clear. So this next row, we've actually done the first 2 rows in this first string of threads, or this first string of beads. And we're going to be putting on the 3rd row right now. So when you make your pattern, keep that in mind. The first row that you put on is actually the first 2. This first circle of beads is the first 2 rows. It's easiest to do the first row just one color. The first 2 rows one color, and that way you don't have to think about it, and you'll see why in just a second. So I've got my next bead on, this purple one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the bead. This is the bead right here that the thread is coming out of. I'm going to skip the next bead after where the thread is coming out and go into the next one. So I'm skipping one bead and going into one bead, just like that. So the thread's coming out here, skipped this bead, going in this one. So I'm just skipping one bead after the thread has come out. And what that does is create a push down of the bead above it, and so this would be our first row, this is our second row, and that's our third, but it's going to go like this the rest of the way. So this is probably the most difficult part of the actual beading technique, is getting this row on. This is where a lot of the mistakes are going to happen outside of missing your pattern. So again, I'm going to skip this bead, go in this one. My thread's coming out here, skip one bead, go in the next. Skip one bead, go in the next. And that's going to be the pattern all the way around. And pull it snug after each row. And you can see how the up-down pattern is starting to emerge. So we'll get all the way around here, and we'll come back and show you what to do next.